Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Fox here. You're somebody who's been a trailblazer in multiple different categories, which I think is, quite rare. You're able to be a pioneer in the male birth control space. You helped create a new method that got a lot of traction and raised. There was millions and millions of dollars that was raised based on what you developed. And then you decided to kind of take your passion and go into your passion for entrepreneurship, and go into a different category, the defense space, and launched WhiteFox Defense, which got you to be recognized in Forbes 30 under 30 and a lot of other prestigious areas. But really, you've been on the cutting edge of drone technology, of autonomous technology, kind of getting to that category as well. And it's an exciting space to be in. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Ben.
Yeah. So just kind of like going back to, what makes you you, like what made you interested in being an entrepreneur and wanting to be kind of on the cutting edge in different categories and do things a little more out there. What made you want to go on this path in your life?
I could tell you that it was never the plan.
Hmm.
I never wanted to be an entrepreneur, never wanted to be a CEO. What I wanted to do was to solve problems. And I started to realize that there's some key things that I saw in the world that no one else was solving, that no one else was doing. And one of my life mottos is, if not me, then who? And I started to realize that these are the things that I have high conviction need to happen that no one else was doing. And so therefore I went on that journey, and that inevitably I was CEO. It's kind of funny when I was reflecting back with a friend when I was from when I was in college, when they were
Hmm.
trying to recruit me to the entrepreneurship club
Hmm.
and at college. And I was like, why would I join that? Like, I'm not like, this like entrepreneur, like what I had in my mind as a entrepreneur. And they're like, because you're the CEO of a company, because you've raised like $15 million, because you're already angel investing, like maybe one of those reasons, maybe you should join. And I think it's interesting as people, I see the CEOs that I mentor, they either are going into it for so many different reasons, and inevitably all ending up in the same room, in the same space.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it seemed like you had an interest in the area, but then it kind of, if around the group you were in, kind of transformed into something. But still, like, the plan A, like, portion of this, how did that happen? I mean, what led to you coming up with this idea? How'd you get that off the ground? Doesn't seem like the simplest thing to do.
It's not the simplest, which is why it hasn't been done. Male birth control is highly complex in many ways, and at the same time, I think with a lot of technology, people conflate it to be impossibly complex. Just because something's difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Male birth control is a perfect example of that. Growing up, I grew up in the foster care system, and I saw so many of my peers that just their lives were completely set astray by having unplanned pregnancies. And as I started to look into this and see this trend, I realized that half of all pregnancies are unplanned.
Mhm.
Half in the United States. It's pretty ridiculous.
Mhm.
And it's kind of my core thesis of what I do today is like, what are the future generations going to look back and be like, come on, like, bro, what were you doing 2025 and half of all pregnancies were unplanned? Are you guys
Mhm.
thought you guys were so modern back then? Uh, and the solution to that is not to find more ways to pump women full of hormones, and to keep that burden on women. But the question I ask myself is, instead of this discussion about the burden of birth control, what if we just rethought birth control? What if it wasn't a burden? What if we can alleviate the burden from the couple? And
Mhm.
that's what set me on the path to design Plan A, and now it's on track with our upcoming market launch in the next couple of years to redefine what it means to live your life with intention.
How does plan A work? Like, what even is it?
Yeah. So what is Plan A is a key question, because it really allows us to ask, well, what is an ideal birth control? Right? What
Hmm.
do people want? Well, birth control is most often, it conceived of as the pill, right? Woman takes a pill every day, and if she misses, or if she takes an antibiotic or anything else that conflicts with that, now all of a sudden it doesn't work as well or not at all. And I said, well, that's kind of silly that we have all these people that are having pregnancies while doing everything right. My friend, for example, he had his wife was on birth control, taking the pill, and they were using protection, a condom, and they still got pregnant.
Hmm.
And even when you're doing everything right. And so I said, well, what if birth control was seen as like a light switch, right? Where you say, like, I want it on, I want my fertility on, I want to be able to have kids. Okay, now I want to turn it off, right? And especially young people, they're going off to college who are in long-term committed relationships where they say, let's have this conversation. Yeah, we want to focus on our career, 3 years at least. Let's not have a kid. Why should that be a daily burden that someone carries? Why shouldn't that just be a light switch? Let's turn it off till we're ready to turn it on.
Mhm. Like, how does it work, like, from a science level?
From a science level, the men have what's known as vas deferens, which is a little tube underneath the skin, very similar to a vein. Right, you have a vein here. Ben, have you gotten your blood drawn recently?
Yeah, like a year ago.
A year ago. Okay, and so you remember you went in, you got your blood drawn, you left. You probably didn't even get a lollipop, right? Because it's not that big of a
Mhm.
deal.
Would have been exciting if I would have.
Yes. Okay, we'll get you a lollipop in the future. And so the way that Plan A works is men have this tube very similar to a vein that's right underneath the skin, and it's accessed very similar to a vein. We developed a lumen access device, which allows you to walk into the doctor, get this 10-minute visit to the doctor that gives you then 10 years of protection. No
Wow.
hormones, no notable side effects, where you have full confidence that it's working until you're ready to reverse it on demand. And the way that works is when we access the vas deferens, which is again very similar to accessing a vein, like in your blood drawn, uh, we put 1 drop of our patented hydrogel. This hydrogel has some really unique properties that enable you to have this long-term durable efficacy while also the biocompatibility so that your body doesn't see it as a foreign object, doesn't try to push it out or encapsulate it. And while it's placed inside the vas deferens, it's also bioadhesive. And so attaches, you can think of like a tube, and attaches to the inner lumen, the inner walls of the vas deferens, and forms this flexible filter. And this flexible filter is a 1 micron filter that prevents sperm from being able to pass through, but allows all other fluids, all other ejaculate to pass through. So there's no change to ejaculation, to pleasure, to
Mhm.
consistency. Everything stays the same. It's like a swimming pool without swimmers.
Interesting. And you guys have done tests already on this, and they've proven successful. So now it's just about getting this out there and fully approved by what FDA, or I mean not FDA, I mean whatever organization it is.
Precisely. So it's Plan A is going through the FDA process in the United States as well as with other countries in the EU around the world to ensure that all men have access to safe and effective birth control that can be turned on when you want protection and turned off when you want to be able to have kids.
What do the costs look like, Fox, for this compared to like other methods? I mean, the condom is so cheap.
The condom is cheap, and the condom is really great at one thing and not great at another. Condoms are
Mhm.
great at preventing STDs. If you want to have that protection, use a barrier method, use condom.
Mhm.
What condoms aren't great at is preventing pregnancy. The FDA
Mhm.
reports a 16 to 18% failure rate with condoms.
Wow.
And at the same time, you can ask, most condom users, and they'd say it's not their favorite solution. Now, again, it's a great method for preventing STDs if you're in a situation where you have that concern and you want that protection. And at the same time, people in long-term committed relationships, which is our target market, those people want to be able to enjoy sex, to be able to enjoy that intimacy without having to worry about, well, statistically, if we use a condom, we might end up with a baby.
Mm. So you've been doing drones at the same time as this.
Yeah, so exactly. So my focus has started out uh, in when I was 17. When I started my first
Mhm.
real company, which was a high performance drone manufacturing company. That that technology was able to enable drones to fly over 100 miles
Wow.
and carry some pretty specialized payload. That technology then is what led me to the awareness that drones could be used for a lot of good, but also a lot of harm. And at the time when nobody really saw that, and people saw drones as these big military things. I said, no, drones are growing in capability and accessibility at an exponential rate year over year. What that means is more people are going to have drones that are more powerful, that can do more harm, but also could do more good. The key is then, how do you manage them? How do you ensure airspace security? And so that's where I started WhiteFox Defense when I was 19. That was the world's first drone defense company. In fact, we named the industry counter UAS. At the time, there was a lot of discussion as we started to put this out there in the world. People were like, oh, there's the drone industry and the anti-drone industry. Like, no, it's not about being anti-drone. So White Fox very quickly became known as the most pro-drone, counter-drone company in the world.
So, what did it take to convince people, governments, to start to use this technology and incorporate this? I mean, now obviously it's a lot more evident, the benefits, because it's been proven. But you were very early, and you were doing this when I think 19 years old, you started this. I mean, you were young. How did you convince these people to work with you?
Well, it goes back to when I just started the company and I had my initial technology. It was this prototype that was it was literally in like this lunchbox thing with a bunch of buttons and lights on the outside. And I took it to the FBI, and I told them, look, like, what are you going to do if a drone has a bomb attached to it? What are you going to do if somebody's doing something nefarious with the drone? And they said, well, they're like, we'll look into this. They're like, I don't know if we really believe this is a threat, but we're going to look into it. They got back and they said, we can't do anything. The general counsel said we can't touch it because drones are considered aircraft. And there's a law, Anti-Piracy, Aircraft Piracy Act, says you can't stop a drone. And there's no exception, you can't stop an aircraft, and drones were considered aircraft regulated by the FAA. And so they said, even if there's a bomb attached to it, we, the FBI, can't stop it because there's no exception built into federal law. We'd be breaking a federal law, which has a mandatory life in prison sentencing guidelines. And I was like, that's kind of insane. We agree to that, right? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, how do you solve that? And they said, well, it takes a literal act of Congress. And so I think looking back and talking to some of those folks now, fast forward, they're kind of trying to get me to get out of their hair. And they're like, we got other fish to fry and drones are a theoretical problem. But I took it literally and, moved my butt over to Washington, D.C. and started working with the legislator, working with Congress, and starting to understand, how our law is being passed. I literally, do you remember the how a bill gets made, the little video from?
I think so.
Yeah, there's like a little guy dancing around cartoon. Well, that was my initial primer. And how do I get a law passed through Congress? And that and a lot of learning, a lot of trial and error, and recognizing that Congress, we see it as this big, like, massive institution. The reality is it's just people that are trying to do a good job, people that, have all sorts of different motivations and reasons that they do what they do. But at the end of the day, they want to do right by themselves and their constituents. And that really enabled me to have these very just human conversations that, hey, this is going to be a problem and we need to get ahead of it. And right now, at the time, no government agency was allowed to stop a drone. So the first law that got passed is what enabled Department of Defense and Department of Energy to stop a credible drone threat that was attacking a nuclear asset. You wouldn't think that would need to be a law, but it was. And then the second one was when I was finally able to get the FBI and other federal agencies able to stop drones that were credible threats. Still today, you fast forward, state, local, tribes and territories, SLTT, public safety, and critical infrastructure operators are still prohibited from stopping a drone threat. You look at what happened in New Jersey, 100% of what happened in New Jersey and throughout the Northeast and still happening throughout the United States is because our government has not been proactive to enable people to authorized agencies and critical infrastructure, like a nuclear power plant, for example, right? A major dam that, if something happened to it, would wipe out hundreds of thousands of homes. That's the world we live in today. So it's incremental progress. We got it. We got 2 federal laws passed, and there's hopefully momentum on the third.
So you became vice chair of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Drone Committee. Was there even a drone committee before that?
There was not. It was the drone and advanced aviation committee is something that we helped to push. There's incredible people at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that are looking around those corners and seeing like what are the areas that we need to start talking about,
Mhm,
especially around regulation. Regulation, especially in this day and age, is very much there's a lot of strong opinions about it. What I can tell you is that the drone industry, and this was part of why I was asked to join as vice chair at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, because the drone industry was asking for regulation.
mhm.
Just like now with male birth control, we're asking for regulation.
And crypto.
And crypto. Yes, all of these industries, and the joke in DC that I'll see if it makes sense to anybody else, but it's the joke is bring me a rock,
Mm,
which is what happens when you don't have regulation. The federal agency says, like not having regulation doesn't mean that they don't have control.
mhm,
When there's no regulation, it means they're saying, bring me a rock. You do all of this work and you bring them a rock and they say, oh, no, actually, I want it to be smoother. You bring them a smoother. Oh, no, I want it to be bigger. I want it to be smaller. Without regulation, you have absolutely no idea as a business how to execute success. You have no idea where the goal is. And as you have changing personnel within those organizations and the federal government, or changing political alliances, everything is lost. And so it's a great example. Crypto is a prime example of that, where they're asking for
mhm.
regulation.
Yeah, I think it's a positive in many ways for you because you get to set the rules. And I mean, obviously there's other people involved, but you can kind of create the foundation for it and you understand that. So there's a lot of benefits though, even though it's not in place.
That's exactly it. When you are able to drive the regulation, it allows you to be able to put really sensible things in place.
Mhm,
It also, it's one of the things that I advise our companies when we invest as we invest in deep tech companies. I tell them, look, there's 2 things that you need to do. One, get regulation in place because then you have a clear North Star. And if there's going to be regulation, wouldn't you rather be the one that's helping to literally draft it and write it
mhm,
and provide feedback to it? Number one. Number two is talk to every other CEO in the industry. Right? You aren't competitors. Right? This isn't this like if you really feel like it's so competitive that you're trying to take the slight little crumbs out from each other, then that's I don't know for me, but that sounds like a horrible
mhm,
industry. I'd rather say like let's have a conversation. Every industry that I've built in, I have conversation with every other CEO, and I say, look, when somebody asks me if you're a competitor, I want to be able to say no, and I want you to be able to say no, and I want to be able to have a very clear line. Right? This is what we're focused on. This is what you're focused on. This is what you do great. This is what we do great. Let's not step on each other's shoes. Let's build not just new products, not just new companies, but entire new industries, entire new ways of thinking and new ways that humans can live.
mhm. I like that attitude. I try to have a similar approach. I think that people need to stop focusing on like the competition in that sense and more on like you can get a lot more done if you align together that will actually make your company more lucrative in the long term. Because there are a lot of things that do better with unison in certain industries, especially
It's a rising tide.
yeah, 100%. So how do you see the like aerospace defense space looking now? I mean, have been this massive change in this. I mean, you're seeing what's happening right now in the Ukraine war. Drones have been a huge piece of that. I mean, the U.S. has their own strategy of what they want to do with drones. How do you see aerospace being changed by drone technology going forward?
What drone technology really enables is a democratization of airspace in warfare. And we
Mhm,
saw this initially, literally on the front lines in the various wars in the Middle East over the
mhm,
last 5-7 years, where drone technology enables whether it's an entire country like Russia and Ukraine, or small bad actors, all the way down to a lone wolf, right, with the Christchurch massacre,
mhm,
up to groups like the Taliban. All of these organizations, what they have is one of their most effective weapons is not the US military giant multi-billion dollar drone program. It's small consumer drones that are practically disposable that enable you to fly quickly with very difficult ability to be able to detect them or stop them if you don't have proactive equipment in place, such as what WhiteFox provides to these different government agencies. For example, in the front lines of the Ukraine war, if you don't have an area covered by equipment like WhiteFox without the counter UAS protection, you're completely exposed. It doesn't matter how many giant Patriot missiles you have. It doesn't matter how many tanks you have. All of those are vulnerable to a simple $300 drone and a 17-year-old kid who was playing video games 6 months before.
Mm. Yeah, and it's amazing how they just make these like makeshift stuff, and it's horrible how much damage it causes. And it's like they make them out of nothing. It's crazy.
Surely
Yeah.
the DIY, the do-it-yourself drone capability and the FPV drones have wreaked havoc for sure across
Yeah.
the Ukraine and Russian war. In fact, both sides will tell you, and have made public statements telling you that drones have completely changed the trajectory of that war
Mhm.
and what modern warfare looks like. It is such a uncanny experience to be in Ukraine at the front lines. You are in, just imagine what feels like you're watching a World War II movie, right? Where you're talking about trench warfare, like just like straight up direct combat. Very different than what how we think about modern warfare. These are not giant aircraft carriers blasting away at each other. You're talking about people in trenches, muddy trenches, getting gangrene, right? Like this juxtaposed against these flying robots that are taking out your equipment repeatedly, and very little ways to stop them if you aren't proactive with technology in place ahead of time. Most of the other types of kind of progression in the defense space is very much you have a lot of different tools at your disposal. It's not very much true with drones. You really need technology that can stop them. And if you don't have it, you are fully exposed, and your entire offensive strategy is laid to bear.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much at that point where it's so crucial, and it's going to define who wins the wars of the future. Just the last question I have, like, what's your long term vision for yourself, and then also just for your companies? I mean, you're involved in two different, pretty ambitious goals here with what you're trying to accomplish. These are not small projects or small tasks by any means. What's your like 5 to 10 year plan? What does this kind of look like for you down the line?
Yeah, my focus is on Next Global Capital as a whole,
Mhm,
where we focus on investing and incubating these companies that are creating worldwide impact.
mhm.
White Fox and Next Life Sciences, which has Plan A, the amazing male birth control technology. Both of those, I'm on the chairman of the board and helping to drive those forward. I couldn't do it without the incredible people that are in the laboratory, that are in the battlefield, that are building the technology in our engineering labs, developing these tool sets. And we also support a lot of other companies that are developing completely paradigm shifting technologies that change the course of humanity. And that's where I think as we take a step forward into what the investing world looks like, and what my focus is over the next 5 to 10 years, is to help drive the investing world more towards impact investing. Impact investing has largely had I'd say has been misguided and highly negative outcomes, with a lot of these environmental ideas of and greenwashing, and let's check some boxes and throw a few hundred million over there so that we can appease investors and be able to raise the next fund. the I think we are past that era, and people are realizing that true impact investing doesn't mean just throwing money away so that you can, write it off. It means investing in companies that truly make an impact on the world, that have a discrete awareness of the productivity and gains that are enhanced and how humanity actually changes. And I think part of that is as AI is driving that, as SaaS technologies, software as a service technologies, become themselves democratized to be able to develop through AI and other no code development projects, those companies are becoming commodities. And now investors have put a heavy focus on what are the companies that actually make something physical, that have some physical impact that I can feel, that I can see, and then also have these strong moats of protection around them so that you can really focus on the long-term strategy and not worry about competitors taking, a percent here and there and eating you alive, but truly on building sustainable companies. You look at the greatest companies that exist today that are worth billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. Those companies have longevity because what they've built is defensible and creates an impact on our daily lives. Whether we know their name or not, it doesn't matter. They are impacting our lives.
I like the mission, and I think it's important to focus on positive impacts. So it's great that you really care about that and that you're putting your capital towards that. I mean, both these missions here are very important for the world. So there's a lot of purpose in that. I'm just excited to see where you're going to do next and where you'll continue to go with all of this. And appreciate you taking the time to share these incredible innovations you're up to. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much, Ben.